Hello, it's Annie, Francesca and Stephanie here presenting our Unit 1 Action Research group project based on Lewis Cubitt Square. We'll split the presentation into two main parts. Firstly, the creation of a research question, including critical analysis of methodologies and the influence of us as researchers in this project. And also, secondly, a critical analysis on the use of collaborative platforms. So through some mixed method research approaches, we both physically visited the square and did some simultaneous Google searching. We were conscious of the bias that this may have introduced, given that the published information is often designed for a commercial audience and that Google searches are largely personalised to your own areas of interest. But Lewis Cubitt Square, we found, was designed by Laurie Olin, who was also behind New York's Bryant Park. And we found the key features to be water fountains, the inclusion of trees and plants to create a square for people to sit, eat, reflect, rest and play in. The square is positioned in the centre of the King's Cross development, almost as a corridor between other spaces, and key uses include for recreational purposes or as a meeting place with venues like the Everyman Cinema and Cold Drops Yard nearby. And there's technical businesses like Meta, DeepMind and Google, the nearby school, university and residential buildings, and the Frank Barnes School for Deaf Children. Through a primary research interview at the King's Cross Visitor Centre, we discovered that there will soon be a new immersive and interactive theatre venue for the London Theatre Company opening on the square. And we observed the square being used for photographic exhibitions, and we're also told of other community-based events such as screenings of Wimbledon. So we followed this initial primary research with some extended reading on research methodologies, influence and bias. And Carl Thompson published this graphic on the screen in 2016, highlighting the factors affecting the choice of research methods. So we use this to critically reflect upon our own situation. With practical considerations, with the limits of time and access to the site, intuitively we thought about ethics, not taking photographs of children and speaking and informing the people we interviewed what the information would be used for. And theoretically, we felt that our research study was more in line with interpretivism than positivism. The nature of our topic was very broad, which led us to believe that it would lend itself to a case study or ethnographic research approach. So we chose a case study approach to develop the initial research, and we felt that this could move to an ethnographic approach, given our interest in observations of how a community uses a space. As an alternative, we also considered Stephen May's published work on critical ethnography, which takes this a step further, not simply conducting the research describing the setting as it appears, but undertaking research to change the setting for the better, because we were starting to develop questions that not only considered what is this square, but also what could this square be. So reflecting on the influence of us as researchers is something that is explored in the research paper on researcher positionality that we read. None of us had any previous knowledge of this square, and we were really little knowledge of each other or our backgrounds or areas of expertise. However, we reflected that as we were all on site together, unlike some of the other groups, and we were quite outgoing as people, this may have influenced our choices of primary research methods. We had to consider our starting points of positionality in terms of cultural background, sex, race, and areas of professional and personal interest, and how this could be influencing our research question development, and the reflexivity on our views and positions as researchers, and how these may have directly or indirectly influenced the design and interpretation of our findings, was a factor that became more prevalent when we moved into selecting areas of interest for secondary research that Stephanie will now explore.
Yes, so we then developed our secondary research with a view to identifying the final research question and by conducting further exploration of the space. So our initial thoughts comprised of, how do you create an identity for a space like this? How do you raise a profile of such a space, particularly around the corner from somewhere so iconic as Granary Square? And how does Lewis Cubitt space function as part of the community, which is really key? And we consider the impact of biophilic qualities for users of the space, and even trace the historical uses of civic squares back to the Victorian period. The local community we found is a mix of high-earning individuals, private and housing association flats, businesses, students and local schools. So since 2019, so pre-pandemic, footfall has actually been a real challenge for the area, and this is mainly due to the high price points within the Coles Drop Yard retail offering. We then supported our secondary research with academic journals, industry and government and Arts Council reports, all of which you can see in the bibliography in Miro. We also researched more recent placemaking initiatives in London, such as the Greenwich Peninsula and Stratford's East Bank, and this was mainly due to their robust social and community engagement strategies. So taking into account our positionality, reflexivity and bias, we then concluded with some key secondary findings through our initial ethnographic approach. These presented the potential shortcomings of the initial 2012 inclusion strategy driving the King's Cross project and how it could be addressed using the government's plan for levelling up and the Arts Council's recent placemaking initiatives. We also consider the effects of the pandemic and the influence this has had upon transforming access to space as a way to engage communities with well-being and also the arts. And finally, as Annie mentioned, we also discovered that a theatre would be opening in Lewis Cubitt Square in 2022, which had a significant impact on our findings. Therefore, we decided on this final question after considering several others, which you can obviously see in Miro. A critical ethnographic study into the use of Lewis Cubitt Square as a sensory space for community connectivity through the opening of an interactive theatre experience. With primary and secondary methods complete, here you can see the action research approach that we took in the selection, analysis and development of collaborative research using digital platforms. This is our critical analysis and limitations of the chosen methodologies. We identified our methodology within this framework adapted by De Vries et al. Within team collaboration in virtual worlds. The 5 themes, people, process, information, technology and leadership, enabled us to critically reflect upon our process of collaboratively working by providing us with a framework for analysis and evaluation of the different methods and platforms available to us. We developed our selection of tech platforms as a result of key areas we personally and collectively wish to investigate further for professional practice. And we were also mindful to push ourselves out of our comfort zones and align with the creative industries. Although Annie and Francesca trialed WhatsApp effectively in previous group work, we collaborated across several platforms to test and trial effective processes. However, as stated by Hollingshead, McGrath and O'Connor, the distraction of pursuing novel platforms can sometimes negatively impact on overall team performance. And this is something we certainly found to be true.
One of our 2 main platforms to explore was Discord. We had heard different personal and professional contacts that talk about this and hadn't used it before, so this fulfilled one of our aims to move out of our comfort zone. Discord is a free voice and text communication application and digital distribution platform. It was designed for creating communities regarding from gamers to education and businesses as NFTs and cryptocurrencies. We acknowledge in our analysis of ourselves as action researchers that we have different technology starting points and time to learn new platforms. As individuals, we all try to connect to Discord. Francesca made most progress on this platform, setting up and recording her initial research, then inviting the others to join. Others in the group had connectivity issues and we weren't able to connect. You can see our Discord board here, which is used to select ideas, links, contents too. Discord is a free platform, but it has some restrictions. In fact, the graphic is not really intuitive and it's not meant to have a customized design. Furthermore, to have a fast communication, WhatsApp remains the main platform to use. Parallel to Discord, we started using the Miro platform also for the first time, and it was surprising how you can take advantage by the platform. Miro is used in a creative sectors as a brainstorming, planning, and collaborative tool. We had not used Miro before, so used the research brief as an opportunity to develop our research and make schemes that could help to make a structure about the work. Stephanie invited us to connect, and the interesting thing is how you can work all together at the same time. Here is shown the other parts of our research, divided into notes, links, and the references as websites, articles, and contents. Miro should be considered a good tool to use for brainstorming activities, both for students and professionals, because it is accessible by all, and because of its graphic, it's easy and intuitive to managing. We worked collaboratively to problem solve and innovate, adapting often using multiple platforms at once. There were a variety of protocols in place in the different platforms that created barriers for us. We struggled with access to Teams, for example. Screen sharing wasn't possible on all aspects of Zoom. Eventually, we chose multiple platforms for easy of use and accessibility. A critical reflection about the collaborative process is that we overcame issues included Wi-Fi connection, language barriers, varying technical ability, and reflecting on whether we stayed on target for the task. In conclusion, our group developed an hypothetical research on Lewis Cubitt Square, having the possibility to use them and analyze digital platforms, which could be indispensable in the development of future research and projects. We had also the opportunity to analyze ourselves as the researchers in this process. And here are some of bibliography and references that we used for the project.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.